Good afternoon. It is June 16th, 2022. And today, really, I would look at this as like a range day with a downward bias. I mean, we were trading, obviously, there's a very strong leg down in the overnight, but then we formed what I saw to be a range right here. And then we had a leg down, and really it was just sideways. Let's see if this measure move shows us anything. So that brings us down here, and we went lower than that, so that's probably not of much significance. But anyway, let's take a look at these trades that I marked. So like I said, we had this leg down in the overnight, and I think this larger channel is valid because I drew it off of these two swings, but it didn't really tell you much. So we have a break of this green channel and a leg down to a new low. Really, you could say that's two legs down, and then we just went sideways, and this looks like a range to me. You see the midline holding prices. Really, I just drew the highs up here and the lows at the bottom of that leg, and we get this leg up to the top, and then you get a first failed second entry. I really like this, especially the way it sets up here, even though it's not off a trend line. We just came off the highs of this range, and it's a very bearish signal bar, and it looks like two relatively the two legs of correction look similar, so I like that, even though you're going short into the midline of the range, which is something to think about. And that forms this spike and channel down, and that's pretty tempting right there, because that's a second entry short pretty clearly. I would say if your signal bar was better than mine, take that, because that's clearly off a trend line to the channel. So we keep working down, nothing in here, way too far from the EMA. This looks like a range right here. So you might think about this one. I kind of like that. Only problem is we had an overshoot, so I'm going to mark that green, and it doesn't touch the EMA. We have an overshoot of this channel, and these lows form, or they kind of confirm this channel up here, especially when we get two touches right here. So unfortunately, when we get up here, you know, you might, if you draw off these lows, the channel off these lows, and then bring it up here, you might take this as a second entry. Ride it back to the EMA. If you see all that, especially look at that midline. That's clearly your channel, but it's definitely risky. And we come down, and if you're patient, you get this congestion, we bounce off the midline, but you get a first entry, second entry, and we know that this is a trend channel. There's room back to the EMA, 92.75. Yeah, there's room back to the EMA. Not a whole lot, but enough for a scalp. So I think you take that. And if you don't take that, you get a first entry, failed second entry long. I don't know if I would consider it on this bar because it closes above the EMA, but when you get this bearish signal bar after, we're making lower highs. It's aggressive, but I think you can take that. And you can see we formed this range. I didn't even draw that, but that's pretty clear. That's a range. We break out to the high side, it fails. And then we break out to the high side again, and that breaks this larger channel. That's the first break. So we break up into this range, and now you get a first entry, second entry. I like that because that's like a you could argue that's like a double test, but the reason I like that, just as an aggressive trade, not as like a high probability red, is it's a second entry. You get a break and a move to a new high, and that's very low risk with a lot of room back to the EMA, 91.25. So that's a 2-point bar, and you got about 5 points, 4 or 5 points back to the EMA. So that should be enough to get you a scalp. And if you don't like that, I mean, it comes back and tests that price level again a few times, but you can't really take any of that. I would consider this, although it's slightly congested, there's 3 bars overlapping right here. After it fails to go higher, 1, 2, you get a triple test right here, and then you get a failed second entry long. I like that. Doesn't quite touch the EMA. I'm not too crazy about that, but that looks pretty good to me. And we keep working lower. This is all too far from the EMA. And then you get a first entry, second entry. I'm not sure why I marked this red. It is a second entry, but it looks aggressive because it really just looks like a range. So I think you'd be better off waiting for a lower high. Looks like a range to me. And then you get this second entry that confirms this channel up, but I think it's too early to go long. The bias has just been too strong to the downside, but this is a second entry long off of a trend channel. So bottom pickers might be taking that. Get this move up, you get a first entry, second entry, and if this signal bar closed above the EMA, I'd probably take it, but it didn't. So you come up here, you get a first entry, second entry. This looks like a repeat pattern of this, but I should probably mark this green because not only are we technically in an uptrend, this is overlapping, and look at this congestion. So I think that's more aggressive than this, which is a breakout pullback in combination with a failed second entry long. Then we get a double test right after, and that's a very nice signal bar, so I like that one. And you can see a lot of other traders like that one too. Then we form what I believe to be in a range. You can see if you draw this as your range, just draw a measured move and it brings you right to here. So I think that shows us the larger range. You get a failure here, but that's so congested. It's also a second entry short. So you might consider that, but all that congestion, you're better off staying out. And I think this is a failure too, but really I shouldn't be marking these failures in this congestion, so I'm gonna take that off. You can see this channel working up, and this kind of looks like a double top first entry, second entry. You might consider that, but that's aggressive because this is just very choppy. Up here, I was thinking about this. This looks like a second entry to me, but this midline looks pretty clear, which means that these channel highs are accurate, and we got a slight overshoot, and really you're just off the midline of that channel, but it's also a breakout pullback, so you might consider that, but you can see that almost stops you out before you even hit a scalp. So really, I don't think I should mark that because I don't want to be taking moves like that, especially with the bias being down. Probably in a strong uptrend day, if we had this range, and then I think that then it would make sense. But in this context, it's probably not a good idea. That channel breaks and fails, and we make a new high, and we reverse, but the reversal happens on the wrong side of the EMA. Then we start moving down. That forms this channel, and I don't see anything in here, mainly because it's pretty far from the EMA. This is congestive. I don't think it's a setup anyway, but we come down here and you get a first entry, second entry, very bearish signal bar off the Chen channel, first break of that channel, room back to the EMA to scalp out. So it actually gaps up. You can see that. And you can see a lot of other traders like that too. Then we come down here, probably make a new low. Yeah, we make a new low, and it reverses. And I don't see any longs in here. This kind of looks, no, that's far from the EMA. And prices just really are just chopping around. So this is kind of tough. I mean, I don't think you would really see that channel like that, because I'd be looking at that channel like this. Now it looks like an overshoot, which leads to a break. And, you know, we're flip-flopping on both sides of the EMA. The reason I'm saying all this is because you have a second entry right here. Second entry long. And you could have had this range drawn. But with this low being higher than this one, you probably wouldn't have this range drawn until this high or this low. But you might think about this. And you might have had the range drawn like this to match with this swing. And that would find support right here. And that looks like a failed break lower right here with a higher low right here. So that's why I gave that a green arrow, but I probably have my range lows drawn like this. So, and that's all I saw. So I think I pretty much covered everything. I hope everyone had a great day, and I'll be back tomorrow.